It usually starts with charm. Not deceit, not lies, charm. The kind that feels intoxicating at first. The man who seems to get you, who looks right into your eyes and makes you feel seen in a way that almost feels spiritual. He's funny, attentive, magnetic, like he studied your soul before he even met you. And yet months later, you'll find yourself staring at the same man wondering who he really is. Because behind that confidence, that sweetness, that perfectly crafted mask, was something else. Something darker. So let's start with a truth most people don't want to face. Men who cheat don't always look like cheaters. They often look like saviors. They know how to mimic emotional depth, how to mirror your values, and how to say all the right words. But if you look closely, really closely, the red flags are always there. Subtle at first, buried beneath flattery. But once you learn to recognize them, you'll never unsee them. If you've ever asked yourself, how did I not see it coming? Stay with me till the end. Because what we're about to explore isn't just about betrayal. It's about awakening your psychological radar, the one that can see through charm, through words, and into character. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's exactly what happens in toxic relationships. We meet someone who seems perfect, but deep down we're connecting not from awareness, but from our unhealed patterns. And certain types of men, especially those prone to cheating, can sense those patterns like sharks sense blood in the water. They feed off emotional naivety, off your empathy, off your hope. Let's take this deeper. Every man carries what Jung called a shadow, the hidden side of his personality that he doesn't want to admit exists. For some, that shadow is harmless, a bit of selfishness, pride, or fear. But for others, that shadow is manipulative, deceptive, and emotionally predatory. These are the men who use love as a disguise. They're not seeking connection. They're seeking control. They crave the rush of being desired, not the depth of being known. And when the excitement fades, when real intimacy begins to demand honesty, they run. Or worse, they cheat, to feed that empty part of themselves that no one can ever fill. So what kind of men always cheat? Not just the ones who flirt or lie, but the ones who have no relationship with their own guilt. They don't feel remorse the way healthy people do, because their emotional world is disconnected. And that's the first red flag, emotional detachment disguised as confidence. If a man seems calm under pressure but never vulnerable, if he tells stories where he's always the hero or the victim, never the one accountable, pay attention. That's not emotional maturity, it's emotional evasion. Before we continue, take a moment to reflect. Have you ever ignored that tiny gut feeling that something wasn't right? Maybe you brushed it off because you didn't want to seem paranoid. But that intuition is your unconscious trying to protect you. Men who cheat are often masters of emotional manipulation. They test boundaries early, small lies, small inconsistencies, to see how much you'll tolerate. And when you forgive them too quickly, they register it. It tells their shadow, this person will understand, this person will bend, and bending becomes breaking. Don't forget to hit like if this already resonates, because by the end of this, you'll know how to recognize every single red flag before it destroys your peace again. Now, let's decode the psychology behind why these types of men cheat. Jung believed that people who live entirely in their persona, the social mask they show the world, are always at war with their shadow. The more perfect the mask, the darker the hidden self. So when you meet a man who insists he's not like other guys, that he's different, special, or too honest to lie, you should pause. Real men don't announce integrity. They live it. Cheaters advertise. And that's the second red flag, overcompensation. When a man tries too hard to appear trustworthy, it's often because deep down he knows he isn't. He's selling you a story, and he needs you to buy it. Here's the third, his relationship with truth. Watch how he talks about his past. Does he take ownership of his mistakes? Or does he rewrite history to paint himself as misunderstood? Listen carefully. Every crazy ex he mentions is a mirror of how he'll describe you later when his mask cracks. And then there's the most seductive red flag of all, the instant connection. You meet, and it feels electric. He says things like, I feel like I've known you forever. It's intoxicating, right? But that's not love. That's mirroring. It's a psychological tactic. He's reflecting your own desires back at you to create false intimacy. And once you're emotionally invested, that's when he starts withdrawing. Why? Because for a shadow-driven man, the thrill isn't in loving you. It's in watching you chase what he withholds. Let's be clear. Not every man who cheats is evil. Some are deeply wounded, emotionally undeveloped, terrified of intimacy. But here's the painful truth. Whether it comes from trauma or arrogance, the result is the same. You end up giving love to someone who doesn't have the emotional capacity to honor it. And that's why learning to spot these red flags early isn't cynicism. It's self-respect. You can't fix what's broken in another person if they refuse to see it themselves. Jung called that projected shadow work. These men project their darkness onto their partners, making you feel like the insecure one, the needy one, the problem. But their problem was there long before you arrived. You just became the mirror that reflected it. So, if you've ever been blamed for making a man cheat, understand this. You can never cause someone to betray you. Cheating isn't a reaction, it's a revelation. It reveals a man's level of self-awareness, self-control and integrity. If this is speaking to you, make sure you subscribe for the next episode, because we're going even deeper into how the male shadow operates in relationships and how to protect yourself energetically and emotionally from it. The men who always cheat aren't just chasing other women, they're running from themselves. Their loyalty isn't to another person, it's to the thrill of escaping their own emptiness. And that's why they can never sustain love, because true love demands honesty, and honesty threatens their illusion. So as we move into the next part of this video, I want you to remember this. Spotting these 8 red flags isn't about judging men. It's about understanding patterns, because once you see the pattern, you can never fall for the same illusion again, and that's where your power begins. Stay till the end, because I'll reveal how to detect the subtlest red flag and the one most women overlook until it's too late. And it's the clearest predictor of future betrayal, because cheaters aren't born, they're revealed one red flag at a time. Let's peel back the mask. Because cheaters don't show their true face, they reveal it in patterns. And once you know how to read those patterns, you'll never question your intuition again. So, let's talk about the 8 red flags that almost always predict infidelity. The subtle, psychological signs that a man's shadow is already plotting its escape before his heart ever admits it. Red flag number 1, the too good to be true charmer. Doesn't fall in love slowly, he sweeps you off your feet. It feels magical, cinematic, almost spiritual. But that intensity isn't love, it's control. According to Carl Jung, when someone operates entirely from their persona, their social mask, they disconnect from their authentic self. The charming man isn't trying to connect. He's trying to impress. His compliments are rehearsed, his vulnerability is strategic, and his devotion is conditional. He rushes the connection because he needs you hooked before you notice the cracks. If a man says, "I've never met anyone like you," within days or weeks, pause. It's not romance and it's emotional bait. Remember this, real connection grows. Manipulation accelerates. Red flag number 2. The man who needs attention to breathe. This man can't stand silence. He needs constant admiration. From you, from other women, even from strangers online. He's fueled by external validation because his ego is fragile. And when a man's ego becomes his identity, he's always searching for new mirrors to reflect his worth back to him. In Jungian psychology, this is called inflation, when the ego expands beyond the true self, creating a false sense of superiority. But deep down, these men are emotionally empty. They don't cheat because they're bored. They cheat because they're addicted to attention. The moment you stop feeding that addiction, they go looking for a new source. Never compete with a man's ego. When his self-worth depends on applause, he'll always need an audience. Red flag number 3, the victim of every story. Pay attention to how a man speaks about his past relationships. If every ex was crazy, needy, or toxic, you're listening to someone who can't take accountability. Jung would call this projection, when a person denies their own flaws and attributes them to others. Cheating men are masters at projection. They project their guilt onto you. They accuse you of what they're secretly doing. They need to believe they're good, even when they're not, so they rewrite reality to protect their fragile self-image. If he blames everyone but himself, it's only a matter of time before you become the next villain in his story. Red flag number 4, the man who can't sit still. He's always busy, always chasing the next thrill, a new job, a new hobby, a new goal. You might mistake it for ambition, but it's actually restlessness, a symptom of a man running from himself. Cheaters are often thrill seekers who can't handle emotional stillness. Silence makes them face their emptiness, and instead of healing it, they try to escape it through novelty, new people, new excitement, new chaos. Jung wrote that the unconscious mind will create external drama to avoid internal confrontation. That's exactly what happens here. He doesn't cheat for pleasure, he cheats to avoid pain. Red flag number 5, the boundary tester. This is the man who flirts with other women just for fun, who keeps exes on social media because it's harmless, who gets defensive when you question him. He'll say, "You're overreacting," or "You're too sensitive," but what he's really doing is conditioning you to doubt your own instincts. In dark psychology, this is called gaslighting, and it's one of the earliest signs of emotional manipulation. If a man consistently pushes your boundaries and makes you question your intuition, he's not preparing for partnership. He's preparing for betrayal. If you feel you have to prove why something hurts you, you're already in danger. Healthy men listen. Cheaters defend. Red flag number 6. The man who feeds on fantasy. He's in love with potential, not reality. He idealizes relationships at first, but the moment they become real, imperfect, human, demanding, he detaches. Why? Because fantasy gives him control. Reality requires accountability. In Jungian terms, this man is possessed by the pure eternus, the eternal boy archetype. He resists emotional maturity. He wants the thrill of romance without the responsibility of it. He'll always be chasing the next one, convinced that the next woman will finally make him feel whole. But no one can fill a void he refuses to face. If a man can't handle emotional depth, he'll always escape into fantasy, and fantasies don't stay faithful. Red flag number 7. The emotional ghost. He's physically present but emotionally distant. You talk but you never connect. He gives half answers, avoids deep topics, changes the subject when things get real. At first you assume he's just private, but over time the emptiness starts to ache. This is the man whose shadow is ruled by fear of intimacy. He wants connection, but vulnerability feels like death to him. Cheating becomes a way to maintain control, to feel powerful, desirable and safe from emotional exposure. Ironically, the more you try to love him, the further he drifts, because love threatens the illusion he hides behind. Red flag, number 8. The man who hasn't faced his shadow. This is the most dangerous type of all. He's self-aware enough to talk about his flaws but not evolved enough to change them. He admits he has trust issues. He says he sabotages relationships. He even jokes about being emotionally unavailable, and you mistake that honesty for growth. But confession without transformation is manipulation. In Jung's framework, awareness without integration is useless. The shadow doesn't vanish because you name it. It must be confronted and owned. A man who knows he's broken but keeps breaking others anyway is far more dangerous than one who doesn't know at all. Don't fall for potential wrapped in pain. When someone tells you they're not ready for love, believe them. Here's the thing, these red flags aren't random. They all point to one deeper truth. A man's relationship with his own shadow determines his ability to stay loyal. When a man hides from his flaws, he's ruled by them. When he avoids emotional accountability, he repeats his patterns endlessly. Cheating, at its core, isn't about attraction or opportunity. It's about avoidance, avoiding truth, avoiding vulnerability, avoiding self-awareness. That's why you can be perfect, loving, loyal, patient, and still be betrayed. Because his cheating had nothing to do with you. It was always about the war inside him. If this is hitting deep, comment "I see the pattern" below, because the moment you recognize these patterns, you stop personalizing betrayal. You stop asking, "Why wasn't I enough?" and start asking, "Why was he so afraid to be real?" And that shift, from blame to clarity, is where your freedom begins. In the final section, we'll explore the psychological awakening that comes from understanding these red flags. and how knowing them not only protects your heart, but completely transforms the way you see love and trust again. Stay till the end, because the conclusion isn't just about spotting cheaters. It's about rising above the pattern that once chose them. Let's be honest. The hardest part about being cheated on isn't the loss, it's the confusion. You replay the moments. You analyze every word, every smile, every touch, searching for the clue you missed. You ask yourself, was any of it real? And somewhere between heartbreak and anger, you begin to question yourself, your worth, your intuition, your capacity to ever trust again. But here's the truth Carl Jung taught us. Every wound is a mirror, and what that man's betrayal reflected wasn't your weakness, it was your awakening. The awakening. Behind betrayal, when someone cheats, they expose the gap between who they pretend to be and who they really are. That gap, that false persona, is the mask their ego wears to hide the chaos underneath. And when you loved him, you weren't loving the cheater. You were loving the potential, the part of him that could have grown, could have healed, could have chosen truth. But he didn't, and that's not your failure. That's his fear. In Jungian psychology, betrayal is often the hand of the unconscious, the psyche's brutal way of forcing you to see what you've been denying. Maybe you ignored the red flags because you believed in his goodness. Maybe you confused intensity for intimacy. Or maybe you thought love could fix what only self-awareness could heal. Whatever the reason, betrayal breaks the illusion. It rips the mask away, and that's why it hurts. Because it's not just the man you lose. It's the story. Why he cheats. And why you stayed. Men who cheat aren't villains by nature. They're emotionally underdeveloped. They've never confronted their own shadows. They chase validation because they're hollow inside. They confuse attention for affection, lust for love, excitement for connection. They are prisoners of their own unhealed pasts. And what Jung understood so profoundly is this. A man who doesn't integrate his darkness will act it out instead. He'll project his guilt onto you. He'll lie to avoid shame. He'll destroy what he secretly craves, stability, intimacy, real love, because his ego fears losing control. So he cheats. Not because he wants more, but because he can't face himself. And you stayed because you saw his potential, not his pattern. You believed in who he could be, not who he kept proving he was. But you can't love someone's potential into reality. You can't heal a man who refuses to meet himself. The shadow. He never faces cheating isn't an act of desire. It's an act of avoidance. A man who cheats is really trying to escape the weight of his own reflection. When Jung wrote about the shadow, he described it as the hidden, repressed parts of ourselves, the parts we're ashamed of, afraid of, or unaware of. For the chronic cheater, the shadow contains his fear of inadequacy, his shame, his childhood wounds, his deep sense of emptiness. He wears confidence to hide insecurity. He plays the hero to conceal guilt. He seduces others to distract from self-loathing. But here's the paradox. Every lie, every affair, every betrayal only deepens the emptiness he's running from, because the shadow always catches up. And while he hides behind the illusion of control, his soul is starving for authenticity, something he keeps destroying. Over and over again, the power of the woman who sees clearly you see. When you begin to understand these red flags, you reclaim your power. You stop making excuses for emotional manipulation. You stop confusing chemistry for connection. You stop trying to fix what was never yours to heal, and that's when the real transformation begins, young. Believe that true individuation, becoming your fullest self, begins when you integrate your own shadow, and yes, that includes the part of you that tolerated disrespect, the part that silenced your intuition, the part that loved him more than you loved your peace. When you see that part of yourself without judgment, with compassion, with truth, you no longer attract what wounds you, because consciousness changes your vibration. You stop craving chaos once you understand its language. You stop romanticizing brokenness once you've healed your own. The spiritual purpose of betrayal doesn't break you. It breaks the illusion that you needed saving. It strips away every false belief about love. Until you finally meet yourself, you start to realize you never needed a man to validate your worth. You needed an awakening to remind you of it. That's the hidden power behind heartbreak. It's not punishment, it's revelation. You were never supposed to chase his love. You were supposed to outgrow his frequency. And one day, when he looks back, when the applause fades, when the thrill of novelty wears off, he'll realize the woman he betrayed was the mirror of his own lost potential. But by then, you'll be too free to care, because your healing becomes the most powerful revenge of all, breaking the pattern for good. Here's the truth. Men who cheat rarely change, not because they can't, but because they refuse to. They keep cycling through the same pattern, calling it bad luck, wrong timing, or crazy exes. But once you awaken, once you see through the mask, you stop being a character in their pattern. You become the observer, the one who knows.